The Grand Galactic Council station hung in space like a crystal jewel. It orbited a neutron star that burned with pale blue light. Inside the massive chamber, beings from 847 different worlds gathered. Some walked on legs, others floated in special containers filled with gas or liquid. A few existed as pure energy, contained in glowing spheres. Ambassador Tae-sung sat in the human delegation section. He wore a simple black suit that looked plain next to the elaborate robes and armor of other representatives. His face showed nothing. No anger, no fear, just calm attention. Behind him stood Captain Yuna, his chief of security. Her hand rested near her weapon, though she knew it would be useless against so many. At the center of the chamber floated Overseer Vrilmoth. He was a being made of orange and purple gas contained in a force field shaped like a sphere. His voice boomed through translation devices that every species carried. "We gathered today to discuss the human problem," Vrilmoth announced. His tone made it clear that humans were not welcome guests, but rather pests to be dealt with. Tae-sung had expected this. Humanity had joined the Galactic Council only 30 years ago. The Council had existed for over 50,000 years. To them, humans were infants, primitive creatures who had barely learned to leave their own solar system. A clicking sound filled the chamber. Representative Kixara rose from her section. She was an insectoid being, tall and covered in black chitin that gleamed under the lights. Her four eyes focused on Tae-sung with obvious hatred. "The humans refuse to follow our laws," Kixara said. Her mandibles clicked together as she spoke. "Every junior member must surrender their military fleet within 50 years of joining. This is our most sacred rule. It ensures peace. The humans have ignored this requirement." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Tae-sung noticed that all the sounds came from senior members. The other junior species remained silent. They knew better than to speak. "Not only have they refused," Kixara continued, "but our intelligence shows they are building more weapons, secret factories on their outer colonies, new ship designs. They mock our laws with their actions." She activated a hologram display. Images appeared in the air above the council floor. Human shipyards, construction facilities, rows of sleek vessels that looked nothing like the clumsy ships humanity had arrived in 3 decades ago. Laughter echoed through the chamber. Not friendly laughter. The mocking kind that made Tae-sung's jaw tighten slightly. It was the only sign of emotion he allowed himself to show. "Look at their toys," someone called out. Tae-sung couldn't see who spoke. "They think these slow boats can match our armadas?" "Primitive," another voice added. "Their weapons are centuries behind ours." Vrilmoth allowed the mockery to continue for a full minute, before raising a gaseous appendage for silence. "Ambassador Tae-sung," he said, "you have heard the evidence. What do you say to these charges?" Tae-sung stood slowly. Every eye, sensor, and awareness in the chamber focused on him. He could feel the weight of their attention, the contempt, the certainty that humanity was about to grovel and beg for mercy. "I say nothing yet," Tae-sung replied calmly. "I'm still listening." More laughter. Vrilmoth's colors darkened, showing annoyance. "There is nothing more to hear. The Council has decided. You will dismantle all military assets within 6 cycles. That is 6 of your Earth months. Any colonies found with weapons will be seized. Any ships that remain armed will be destroyed. This is not negotiable." "What if we refuse?" Tae-sung asked. His voice remained steady, conversational even, as if he were discussing the weather rather than the fate of his entire species. The chamber fell silent. The question was so absurd that no one seemed to know how to respond. Junior members didn't refuse the council. Ever. Kixara's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of her amusement. "Then you will be sanctioned. Trade embargo, seizure of assets, isolation from all galactic commerce and communication." Tae-sung nodded slowly. He reached into his jacket pocket. 20 weapons instantly pointed at him. Force fields activated. Yuna's hand moved to her gun, but Tae-sung gave her a small shake of his head. He pulled out a small data tablet. Nothing more. The weapons lowered, though many remained trained on him. "Sanctions," Tae-sung repeated. He tapped the tablet and a new hologram appeared. This one showed a star chart. 3 solar systems were marked in red. "Is that what happened to the Velkari 50 years ago?" Vrilmoth's colors shifted rapidly. Surprise, then anger. "That is classified information." "How did you— And the Thorn civilization?" Taesung continued, pulling up more data. 800 years ago, also sanctioned according to your records. You have no right to access council archives. Kixara shrieked. Taesung ignored her. Funny thing about sanctions. Every species that received them is now extinct. Their worlds are empty. Their cities are ruins. He looked up at Vrilmoth. That's not an economic punishment. That's genocide. The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted in hundreds of languages. Translation devices struggled to keep up. Accusations flew at Taesung. Demands for his arrest. Calls for immediate military action against Earth. Through it all, Taesung remained standing, calm, waiting. Vrilmoth expanded his form, making himself larger. His voice cut through the noise like a blade. Silence! The chamber obeyed instantly. You have no proof, Vrilmoth said. And even if you did, it changes nothing. We number in the trillions. We command millions of ships, thousands of worlds. You are one species. One small, weak, primitive species that barely understands fusion power. You cannot threaten us. You cannot bargain with us. You will obey or you will cease to exist. Taesung set down his tablet. He straightened his jacket. Then he smiled. It was not a friendly smile. Overseer Vrilmoth, Representative Kixara, distinguished members of the Galactic Council. His voice carried clearly to every corner of the massive chamber. I have listened to your ultimatum. I have considered your threats. I have reviewed the evidence of your crimes. He took a breath. And now I have an announcement to make. The chamber held its collective breath. Taesung could feel Yuna tense behind him. She knew what was coming. She had been part of the planning for years. As of this moment, Taesung said clearly, humanity formally declares war on the Galactic Council. For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The words were so unexpected, so absurd that they seemed to make no sense. Then the laughter started. It began with Kixara's clicking mandibles and spread like wildfire. Within moments, the entire chamber roared with laughter. They laughed until tears fell from those who had eyes. They laughed until translation devices glitched from the volume. Vrilmoth's colors shifted through purple and red, showing his amusement. You declare war, you? He laughed, a sound like wind through hollow tubes. This is suicide. This is madness. We will crush you like insects. Your planet will burn. Your colonies will be dust. And your species will be nothing but a cautionary tale we tell. Junior members about the price of arrogance. Taesung's smile widened. We counted on that, he said, softly. And that's when the alarms started to sound. The alarms cut through the laughter like a knife. Red lights flashed throughout the council chamber. Emergency protocols activated automatically. Force fields snapped into place around sensitive areas. Security doors began to close. Vrilmoth's gaseous form turned a deep crimson. What is this? What have you done? Taesung gestured to his tablet. A new hologram appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed a live feed from a council military installation. The base was on fire. Ships exploded in their docking bays. Defense platforms crumbled as internal explosions tore them apart. That's Outpost 7 in the Kelmar system, Taesung explained calmly. Or rather, that was Outpost 7. About 3 minutes ago, human forces destroyed it completely. Another hologram appeared. Then another. And another. 12 different locations across council space. All burning. All under attack. Impossible! Kixara shrieked. She rushed to her console, her 6 legs moving in a blur. You couldn't reach those systems. Our sensors would have detected your fleet movements weeks ago. Would they? Taesung asked. He walked slowly around the chamber floor, his hands behind his back. Yuna moved with him, watching for threats. Your sensors are very good. We studied them carefully. 30 years is a long time to learn. Admiral Hyan appeared as a hologram beside Taesung. She was a woman in her 60s, wearing the dark blue uniform of the Earth Defense Force. Her silver hair was pulled back in a tight bun. Her expression showed no mercy. Council members, Hyan said. I am Admiral Hyan of the United Earth Fleet. As Ambassador Taesung stated, we have begun military operations against your facilities. 23 installations have been neutralized. 47 of your supply depots are currently burning, and 16 of your shipyards are no longer functional. The chamber descended into chaos again. Delegates screamed at each other. Some rushed to leave. Others tried to contact their homeworlds. Security Chief Raxel, a 4-armed reptilian warrior, drew his weapons and pointed them at Taesung. Stay where you are, Raxel growled. His scales were a deep green that showed his agitation. You are under arrest for acts of war against the Council. Yuna stepped between Raxel and Tai Sung. Her hand rested on her weapon. I wouldn't do that if I were you. You dare threaten me? Raxel's forearms tensed. His weapons charged with an audible whine. Tai Sung put a hand on Yuna's shoulder. Stand down, Captain. There's no need for violence here. Not yet. He turned to face Vrilmoth directly. Overseer, I suggest you listen to what Admiral Hyan has to say. The next few minutes will determine whether this war stays limited or becomes total. Vrilmoth's colors shifted rapidly through reds and oranges. Pure rage. You attack us and then demand we listen? You will die for this. Your entire species will be erased from existence. Maybe, Taesung agreed. But a lot of you will die first. And I mean a lot. Admiral Hyan continued as if they hadn't been interrupted. For 30 years you thought we were stupid. Primitive, slow to learn. You let us dock our ships at your stations. You let our diplomats tour your facilities. You let our scientists study at your universities. You taught us everything about your technology while assuming we couldn't possibly understand it or improve on it. She smiled. It was not a kind smile. You were wrong. More holograms appeared. These showed human ships in combat. The vessels moved with impossible speed, dodging weapons fire that should have destroyed them. They struck with precision that no Council species had ever demonstrated, and they used tactics that seemed to predict every Council response before it happened. Your military doctrine hasn't changed in 3,000 years, Hyan explained. You rely on overwhelming numbers, massive firepower, brute force. It works when you fight species that think the same way. But we don't think like you. We adapt, we innovate. We find weaknesses and exploit them. A Council delegate stood up. He was a tall being made of living crystal that refracted light in rainbow patterns. This is madness. You cannot win. We have millions of ships, billions of soldiers, resources from 1,000 worlds. And we have something you lost a long time ago, Taesung said quietly. Desperation. When you fight because you must, when surrender means extinction, you fight differently, harder, smarter. Kixara's console beeped urgently. She read the incoming data and her mandibles froze in mid-click. The shipyard at Telos Prime, it's gone. Just gone. 3,000 ships were docked there. Now it's debris. More reports flooded in. Every delegate received messages from their homeworlds. Panic spread like a virus through the chamber. Our defense grid is offline. My planet's orbital platforms aren't responding. We've lost contact with the 7th Fleet. Vrilmoth watched his perfect order crumble in real time. How? How did you get past our defenses? Our security is absolute. Taesung gestured to a quiet section of the chamber where several junior species sat. They had been silent throughout the entire meeting. Now they watched with barely concealed hope in their various eyes and sensors. You have a weakness, Taesung said. You treat junior members like slaves. You take their resources. You crush their spirits. You make them desperate. And desperate people make excellent allies if you offer them hope. One of the junior delegates stood. He was from a species that looked like walking plants, with bark-like skin and leaves instead of hair. The Valen people stand with humanity, he announced. His voice shook with fear, but he spoke anyway. Another delegate rose. Then another. Within moments, 15 junior species had declared their support for humanity's rebellion. Raxel aimed all 4 weapons at the plant delegate. Traitor. You will be executed for this. Probably, the Valen agreed. But I'll die free instead of living as a slave. That's worth it. Admiral Hyan's hologram grew larger, dominating the chamber. Here are our terms. The Council will dissolve. All member species will form a new federation based on equal representation. No more senior and junior members. No more forced disarmament. No more sanctions that are really genocide. Never. Vrilmoth roared. His gaseous form expanded until it pressed against his containment field. We will crush you. Every human world will burn. Your entire species will become a warning to others. Then you guarantee your own destruction, Taesung said. His voice remained calm, but his eyes were hard as steel. Because we planned for that too. A new hologram appeared. This one showed a massive human fleet. Thousands of ships, all bearing weapons that the Council had never seen before. These vessels are equipped with quantum tunneling drives, Hyan explained. Your physics said they were impossible. Your scientists laughed at the concept. But we built them anyway. They can appear anywhere in the galaxy without warning, inside your planetary shields, next to your command stations, in the middle of your civilian populations. She let that sink in for a moment. If you try to exterminate us, these ships will ensure you die too. Every council world, every station, every ship. We'll take you all with us into the dark. Is that what you want, Overseer? Mutual annihilation? The chamber fell silent. Every being present understood the implications. War with humanity wouldn't be a quick police action. It would be total war. The kind that left everyone dead or broken. Kixara spoke quietly, her earlier mockery gone. You would really do it? Kill billions? Tae-sung's expression didn't change. Would you? Because that's what your sanctions do. That's what you were planning to do to us. We're just making it clear that we won't die alone. This is terrorism, Vrilmoth said, but his colors had faded to pale orange. Uncertainty. No, Tae-sung corrected. This is war. You declared it when you gave us your ultimatum. We just chose to fire the first shot instead of waiting to be murdered quietly. Raxel slowly lowered his weapons. His forearms trembled with rage, but he wasn't stupid. Starting a firefight in the council chamber would accomplish nothing. Yuna moved closer to Tae-sung. Sir, we need to leave soon. Tae-sung nodded. He looked at each delegate in turn, making sure they saw his face. Remembered this moment. You have two choices, he said clearly. Work with us to build something better, or fight us and watch everything burn. Choose quickly. We won't wait long for your answer. With that, he turned and walked toward the exit. Yuna and the small human delegation followed. The rebel species delegates joined them, forming a group of beings who had decided that freedom was worth any price. Behind them, the Galactic Council sat in shocked silence. Their perfect order had been shattered in less than an hour. The primitives had struck back, and the galaxy would never be the same. 3 weeks before the declaration, Commander Daehyun had walked through the maintenance corridors of Council Shipyard Theta 7 wearing a stolen uniform. The badge on his chest identified him as a Relton worker, one of hundreds who serviced the massive facility. Nobody looked twice at him. His team was already in position. 8 humans, all disguised as various species, spread throughout the shipyard. They had been working here for 6 months, learning the systems, mapping the defenses, finding the weak points that centuries of arrogance had created. Positions check, Daehyun whispered into his hidden communicator. Bay 3, ready, came the first response. Engineering level, ready at command center in position, one by one. His team confirmed they were ready. Daehyun allowed himself a small smile. They had done it. They were inside one of the most secure facilities in the galaxy, and nobody suspected a thing. He reached his destination, a maintenance panel that looked like thousands of others. But this one connected directly to the shipyard's central computer core. Daehyun opened his toolkit and pulled out a device that looked like a normal repair scanner. It wasn't. Deploying virus now, he reported. The device connected to the panel. Lines of code flowed through the connection, invisible and silent. The virus had been written by Earth's best programmers, designed specifically to exploit weaknesses in Council software architecture. It took 17 seconds to upload completely. 17 seconds that felt like years. Upload complete, Daehyun said. Phase 1 is live. Across the galaxy, in a secure bunker deep beneath the surface of Earth, Jiwoo watched her screens with intense focus. She was 23 years old and looked even younger, but she commanded the most sophisticated military operation humanity had ever attempted. 17 different locations showed on her displays. Each one was a Council military target. Each one had human teams in position. Each one was about to have a very bad day. All teams report green status, her assistant said. Jiwoo nodded. She had been planning this for 2 years. Every calculation, every timing sequence, every possible response the Council might make. She had wargamed it all thousands of times in simulation. Now it was real. She checked the chronometer. Ambassador Tae-sung would be making his declaration in exactly 3 minutes. She needed everything to start at precisely the right moment. Too early and the Council would have warning. Too late and Tae-sung would look foolish. 2 minutes, she announced. Her voice was calm despite the adrenaline flooding her system. The bunker was silent except for the soft hum of computers and the breathing of her staff. 50 people all watching their stations, all waiting for her command. 1 minute, Jiwoo's fingers hovered over the master control. 1 button. That's all it would take. One button would change history forever. Would start a war that might end her species, or might free the galaxy from tyranny. 30 seconds, she thought of her family. Her parents who had fled Korea decades ago to help build humanity's first colony ship. Her brother who served on a defense station. They would all be targets soon. The Council would show no mercy, that's why this had to work. 10 seconds. 5. Execute. Jiwoo pressed the button. Across the galaxy, in 17 different locations, human teams activated their sabotage programs simultaneously. At Shipyard Theta 7, Daehyun's virus woke up. It seized control of the automated defense systems and turned them against the very ships they were meant to protect. Turrets rotated and fired on docked vessels. Missile batteries launched their payloads into fuel storage tanks. Maintenance robots went berserk, tearing apart critical systems. In less than 2 minutes, the entire shipyard was in flames. Daehyun and his team ran through corridors filled with smoke and screaming aliens. They reached their escape shuttle just as a massive explosion tore through the engineering section. "Go, go, go," Daehyun shouted. The shuttle launched, accelerating hard away from the dying shipyard. Behind them, 3,000 Council warships burned. Similar scenes played out across known space. Supply depots exploded. Command stations went dark. Defense grids failed catastrophically. And every failure was caused by the Council's own systems, turned against them by human ingenuity. Jiwoo watched the results pour in. All 17 targets were hit. All 17 were neutralized or destroyed. 0 human casualties. Phase 1 complete, she reported to Admiral Hyun. Phase 2 is ready on your command. Back on the Council station, Tae-sung and his delegation were moving fast through the corridors. Emergency bulkheads were closing. Security forces were mobilizing. They had perhaps 5 minutes before the entire station went into lockdown. Yuna led the way, her weapon drawn. She had studied the station's layout for months. She knew every shortcut, every access tunnel, every security blind spot. "Left here," she commanded. The group followed without question. Raxel appeared at an intersection ahead, backed by a dozen armed guards. All 4 of his arms held weapons pointed at the humans. "You will not escape," the reptilian security chief growled. "Surrender now or die." Yuna didn't slow down. She raised her weapon and fired in one smooth motion. But she didn't aim at Raxel. She aimed at the ceiling above him. The shot hit a support beam with a shower of sparks. The beam groaned and collapsed, bringing down a section of the corridor between them and the guards. Dust and debris filled the air. "Keep moving," Yuna shouted. They ran through maintenance areas that most Council species didn't even know existed. Narrow passages designed for small repair drones. Yuna had to crouch to fit through some sections. The taller aliens with them had even more trouble. "How much farther?" Tae-sung asked. He wasn't even breathing hard despite the running. "Military training never really left you." 2 more corridors, Yuna replied. "Our ship should be docked at Port 73. Behind them, they could hear Raxel's forces trying to move the debris. They had maybe 2 minutes. They burst through a final door and into the docking bay. Their ship waited exactly where it should be. A small, fast vessel that looked unarmed and harmless. It was neither. The human crew had the engines already running. The airlock was open. "Everyone aboard," Tae-sung ordered. The rebel delegates scrambled up the ramp. Yuna counted heads. All present. She was about to follow when weapons fire rang out behind them. Raxel had broken through. His guards fired energy weapons that scorched the walls and floor. Yuna returned fire, forcing them to take cover. "Captain, get aboard," Tae-sung shouted from inside the ship. 30 seconds, sir," Yuna called back. She fired 3 more shots to keep the guards pinned down. The ship's engines were reaching launch power. The docking clamps disengaged with a loud clang. They were about to leave with or without her. Yuna sprinted for the airlock. A blast of energy caught her in the shoulder, spinning her around. Pain exploded through her arm, but training took over. She kept moving, stumbled up the ramp, and fell through the airlock door. The door sealed behind her. The ship launched immediately, accelerating hard away from the station. Inside, Tae-sung helped Yuna to her feet. Her shoulder was burned badly, but the wound wasn't fatal. "That was closer than planned," Tae-sung said. Yuna managed a pained smile. "All part of the job, sir." On Earth, Jiwoo watched the escape ship clear the station's weapon range. "Ambassador is safe," she reported to the command staff. "All extraction teams are away from their targets. Phase 2 can proceed." Admiral Hyon appeared on the main screen. Begin Phase 2. Show them what we can really do. Jiwoo's fingers flew over her controls. Phase 1 had been about surprise, about showing the Council that humanity could strike anywhere. Phase 2 was about showing them that humanity could win. New orders flashed out through quantum-entangled communication systems that the Council didn't know humans possessed. Ships that had been hiding in the outer systems of Council worlds received their commands and began to move. Within hours, the first real battles of the war began. Human ships engaged Council patrols. The fights were brutal and short. Council commanders expected easy victories. They were used to fighting species that used the same tactics they did. Formations, set-piece battles, predictable maneuvers. Humans fought differently. Their ships moved like dancers, never staying still. They struck from unexpected angles. They retreated before the Council could bring superior numbers to bear. And they used weapons that Council sensors couldn't track properly. One battle near a gas giant was particularly brutal. A Council fleet of 200 ships cornered 30 human vessels. The Council commander celebrated what he thought was an easy victory. The human ships dove into the gas giant's atmosphere. The Council ships followed, confident in their heavier armor and shields. They didn't know that humans had spent months mapping that particular gas giant. They didn't know about the pressure pockets and electromagnetic storms. They didn't know that human ships had been specifically designed to operate in such environments. By the time the surviving Council ships retreated, they had lost over half their fleet. The human ships had lost 3. Back in her bunker, Jiwoo tracked every battle. Every victory, every loss. The war had truly begun, and across the galaxy, junior species watched the humans fight and began to hope. Maybe the Council wasn't invincible after all. Maybe freedom was possible. Maybe it was time to choose a side. 3 months into the war, Overseer Vrilmoth stared at the tactical display with something humans might recognize as fury. His gaseous form swirled with dark reds and blacks. Around him, his military commanders stood silent, afraid to speak. The map showed over 300 systems. Red markers indicated Council losses. There were far too many red markers. "Explain this to me again," Vrilmoth said quietly. Quiet was worse than shouting. Everyone in the room knew that. "How are we losing to primitives?" High Commander Zelkor stepped forward nervously. He was a massive being covered in thick armor plates. His species had evolved as apex predators. He feared nothing in the galaxy, except Vrilmoth when he was angry. "Overseer, the humans fight in ways we've never encountered. They don't engage in traditional battles. They hit supply lines, retreat before we can respond, and strike somewhere else before we can reposition. It's like fighting smoke." "Then burn the smoke at its source," Vrilmoth snapped. "Where is their homeworld?" "Earth, Overseer. We have its exact coordinates. Then assemble the Grand Fleet, every available ship. We will make an example of Earth that the entire galaxy will remember for 10,000 years. Zelkor hesitated. "Overseer, that will leave many systems undefended. I don't care. The humans want war? We'll give them war. Totalva. Send the order." Across Council space, the command went out. Every warship was to converge on one location. Earth, the human homeworld. Where this rebellion had started, it would end. It took 6 weeks to assemble the fleet. When it was complete, it was the largest military force ever gathered in galactic history. 10 million ships. Everything from massive dreadnoughts the size of small moons to fast attack craft that moved in swarms. Vrilmoth personally took command of the armada. He would see humanity's end with his own sensors. On Earth, Admiral Hyon stood on the bridge of the orbital defense station and watched the sensors with grim determination. The Council fleet was 3 days away, coming straight at them with no attempt at stealth. They wanted Earth to see them coming, wanted humanity to feel terror. She was terrified, but she'd never admit it. "How many ships do we have?" she asked her tactical officer. 5,000, Admiral. That's everything we can spare without leaving the colonies defenseless. 5,000 against 10 million. The math was simple. Earth was going to lose unless the plan worked. "Has Dr. Sang-mi reported in?" Hyon asked. "Yes, Admiral. She says the quantum drives are ready. All ships are equipped," Hyon nodded. Sang-mi had been working nonstop for 3 months on a theory that most human scientists said was impossible. But then humans had a habit of doing impossible things lately. "Contact Ambassador Tae-sung. Tell him we're implementing Protocol Endgame." Far from Earth, on a mobile command ship disguised as a civilian transport, Tae-sung received the message. He had been coordinating with the rebel species, building an alliance that now included 40 different civilizations. Small ones mostly, species that the Council had crushed and controlled for generations, but small forces added together could become something larger. Yuna, he said to his security chief. Her shoulder had healed well, though she still favored her other arm. Send the signal to our allies. It's time to move. All of them, sir? Even the ones near Council homeworlds? Especially those. If Vrilmoth wants to leave his worlds undefended, we'll make him regret it. The Council fleet arrived at Earth exactly on schedule. Vrilmoth's flagship, a massive sphere of crystallized energy, took position at the center of the formation. 10 million ships surrounded Earth like a metal cloud. Admiral Hyan watched them come. Her 5,000 ships formed a defensive sphere around Earth, outnumbered 2,000 to 1. It was insane, but she smiled anyway. Vrilmoth's voice boomed across all communication channels. Humans of Earth, you have brought this upon yourselves. Surrender now and we will make your deaths quick. Resist and your planet will burn for days before the end comes. Hyan opened a channel in response. Her face appeared on screens across the Council fleet. She made sure they could all see her smile. Overseer Vrilmoth, you've made a mistake. The only mistake was allowing your species into the Council, Vrilmoth replied. But that will be corrected shortly. This is your last chance. Surrender or die. No, Hyan said simply. I don't think we will. She gave the signal. Every human ship powered down. Weapons went offline. Shields dropped. Engines cut to minimal power. They just floated there, apparently helpless. Vrilmoth laughed, a sound like crystals shattering. You give up? After all your brave words? Give up? Hyan's smile grew wider. We're just getting started. The human ships vanished, not destroyed. Not jumped away. They simply ceased to exist in normal space. One moment they were visible on every sensor. The next moment, nothing. Confusion rippled through the Council fleet. Commanders checked their instruments, ran diagnostics, searched for the human ships. They didn't find them, because the ships hadn't left. They had entered quantum slipspace. Dr. Sangmi's impossible theory had become reality. Human vessels could phase out of normal space for short periods. They became invisible, untouchable, ghosts. And then they reappeared. Not around Earth, where the Council expected. Inside the Council formation. Scattered among the 10 million ships like mines in a field. At point-blank range, human weapons fired, not at the heavily armored hulls of Council dreadnoughts. At their engines, their power cores, their weapon systems. Precise shots that crippled rather than destroyed. In the first 10 seconds, 3,000 Council ships went dark. Panic set in immediately. The Council fleet was designed to fight enemies at long range, to overwhelm them with numbers and firepower. They had never trained for close combat. For knife fighting in space, humans had Council ships fired at anything that moved. Half the time they hit their own vessels. The formation disintegrated into chaos. Ships collided trying to maneuver. Weapons struck friends instead of foes. And through it all, human ships phased in and out of slipspace, striking and vanishing before the Council could respond. They were everywhere and nowhere. Impossible to track. Impossible to hit. Admiral Hyan watched from her station as the largest fleet in galactic history tore itself apart. She felt no joy in it. War was never something to celebrate. But she felt satisfaction. They had hurt the Council badly. Then the message came in. Urgent. From Tae-sung. Admiral, the Council homeworlds are under attack. Our allies have struck simultaneously across 200 systems. The Council is pulling forces back to defend their capitals. Hyan checked her tactical display. Sure enough, parts of the Council fleet were breaking off, trying to rush home to protect their families. This was the moment. All ships, Hyan commanded. Focus fire on Vrilmoth's flagship. Take him out and this fleet loses all coordination. The human ships converged on the massive crystalline sphere at the center of the chaos. Hundreds of weapons struck it simultaneously. Its shields flared and held. But barely. Vrilmoth's voice cut through the battle noise. You cannot win. Even if you destroy me, the Council endures. We will hunt you across the stars until every human is dead. Maybe, Hyan replied. But you won't be alive to see it. The combined fire of Earth's defense fleet focused on a single point in Vrilmoth's shields. The shields flickered, failed, and weapons fire struck the flagship directly. The explosion was visible from Earth's surface, a new star in the sky that lasted only seconds. When it faded, Vrilmoth was gone. The Council fleet disintegrated. With their supreme commander dead and their homeworlds under attack, individual ships made their own decisions. Some fled, some surrendered, some fought on stubbornly until they were destroyed. By the end of the day, Earth's orbit was full of debris and derelict vessels. The largest fleet ever assembled was scattered across a dozen light-years. Admiral Hyan slumped in her command chair. They had won. Earth survived. But as she looked at the casualty reports, she knew the price. 400 human ships destroyed, thousands dead. And this was just one battle. The war was far from over. 1 year after Taesung's declaration, the galaxy looked very different. The Galactic Council still existed, but its power was broken. 40 species had openly rebelled. Dozens more refused to follow Council orders. Trade had collapsed. Systems that had been connected for millennia were now isolated and afraid. In a neutral space station on the edge of known space, Taesung met with representatives from both sides. The war had reached a stalemate. Neither side could win. Neither side could afford to keep fighting. The meeting room was simple. A round table with chairs adapted for different species. No guards, no weapons, just tired beings who had seen enough death. Representative Kixara sat across from Taesung. The insectoid who had once mocked humanity now looked at him with something that might have been respect. Or maybe just exhaustion. "How did it come to this?" she asked quietly. Her mandibles clicked softly, a sign of confusion among her people. "You know how," Taesung replied. He looked older than he had a year ago. The war had aged him. Your council demanded obedience. We chose freedom. It was always going to end in blood. Freedom, Kixara repeated the word like it was foreign. We maintained order for 50,000 years. We kept peace across hundreds of species. That was more important than freedom. Peace through oppression isn't peace, Taesung said. It's just delayed rebellion. We were the first to say no. But we won't be the last. An elder being entered the room. Wei Sun was from one of the oldest species in the galaxy. His people had existed for over 1,000,000 years. They rarely involved themselves in galactic politics, but the war had touched everyone. Wei Sun resembled a floating collection of light, contained in a body that was barely physical. When he spoke, it sounded like wind chimes. Both of you are correct, Wei Sun said, and both are wrong. The council brought order, but it became tyranny. Humanity brought freedom, but at the cost of millions of lives. Then what do you suggest? Kixara asked. Something new, something that combines the best of both systems. For 3 days they talked, argued, sometimes shouted, but slowly a plan emerged. The council would dissolve. In its place would be a true federation. Every species would have representation based on population, not on how long they'd been members. Military forces would be voluntary, not forced. Junior species would have the same rights as senior ones. The older council members will never accept this, Kixara warned. Then they can stay isolated, Taesung said. The rest of the galaxy is moving forward. They can join us or be left behind. The proposal was sent out to every world in known space. Some rejected it immediately. The old council loyalists called it surrender to terrorists, but slowly others began to agree. Small species that had been crushed for generations voted yes. Mid-level powers that were tired of war voted yes. Even some senior species, seeing which way the wind was blowing, voted yes. 6 months later, the vote was counted. The new Galactic Federation was born. But the war wasn't quite over. In the outer colonies, a human settlement called New Sol faced its darkest hour. The Council's most loyal fleet, refusing to accept the new order, had launched one final attack. They believed that if they could hurt humanity badly enough, the Federation would collapse. The missiles came without warning. 16 fusion warheads struck New Sol cities. Millions died in seconds. Among them were the families of young pilot Minho and thousands of other soldiers. When Minho heard the news, he was on his ship preparing for patrol duty. His wife, his daughter, his parents, all gone in nuclear fire. He sat in his cockpit and stared at nothing for a long time. Admiral Hyan contacted all ships immediately. This is an act of genocide. The Council loyalists have crossed every line. I am authorizing full retaliation. We will strike every Council loyalist world with the same weapons they used on us. The order went out. Human ships armed with fusion weapons began targeting civilian populations. An eye for an eye. Blood for blood, Taesung heard about the order while meeting with Federation representatives. He immediately opened a channel to Hyun. "Admiral, you need to recall those ships." "No," Hyun said flatly. "They killed millions of our people. They need to pay." "If we do this, we become exactly what we've been fighting against," Taesung argued. "We'll be genocidal monsters. Everything we've built will be destroyed. They started it. And we have to be better than them." The argument raged for an hour. Other human leaders joined the call. Some agreed with Hyun. Justice demanded blood. Others sided with Taesung. Mercy was the only path forward. Finally, Minho himself appeared on the channel. His eyes were red from crying. His voice shook with grief and rage. "Admiral Hyun, I lost everything. My whole family is dead. I want revenge more than I want to breathe." "Then you understand," Hyun said. "But Ambassador Taesung is right," Minho continued. "If we kill their civilians, we're no better than them. My daughter died in those attacks. I don't want her death to mean that we became monsters too. I want it to mean we were better, that we chose to be better." Silence on the channel. Yeon finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "Recall the strike force." The ships turned back. The Council loyalist worlds were spared, and across the galaxy, beings who had been watching to see what humanity would do felt something they hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The war officially ended 2 months later. The last Council loyalist forces surrendered when they realized no reinforcements were coming. Their leaders were put on trial for war crimes. Some were executed. Others spent life in prison. But their civilian populations were left alone. The new Galactic Federation held its first assembly on a massive station built specifically for that purpose. Every member species sent representatives. The chamber was designed so that no one sat higher than anyone else. No senior members. No junior members. Just equals. Ambassador Taesung stood at the podium on opening day. He was retiring after this. He had done what he set out to do. Now it was time for younger people to build the future. "We gathered here a year and a half ago in a very different place," he said. "Then I declared war on the Council. It seemed impossible. Insane. But we did it because we believed freedom was worth fighting for." He looked around the chamber at hundreds of different species. "Many of you joined us. You risked everything. Some of you lost everything. We won, but the cost was terrible. Billions died in this war. Billions more were displaced. Entire worlds were scarred." He paused, letting the weight of those words sink in. "We cannot undo that damage. We cannot bring back the dead. But we can make sure they didn't die for nothing. This Federation is their legacy, a galaxy where no species is forced to kneel, where junior and senior mean nothing, where might doesn't make right. It won't be easy," he continued. "We come from different worlds, different cultures, different ways of thinking. We'll argue. We'll disagree. Sometimes we might even threaten to leave. But as long as we talk instead of fight, as long as we negotiate instead of dominate, we'll be better than what came before." He stepped down from the podium. The chamber erupted in applause. Clicks, whistles, roars, and sounds humans had no names for. All showing approval, Taesung left the station that evening. Captain Yuna accompanied him to his ship. Her shoulder had healed completely, though she would always have a scar. "What will you do now, sir?" she asked. "Go home," Taesung said. "Visit my family. Sleep for about a month. Maybe teach at a university. What about you?" "Admiral Hyun offered me a position training the Federation security force, teaching them human tactics." "You should take it. You're good at what you do." "I learned from the best." Taesung's ship took him back to Earth. He spent most of the journey sleeping. When he arrived home, his family was waiting. His children were older now. They had grown up during the war. Seen things no children should see, but they were alive. Earth was safe, and the future looked brighter than it had in a long time. 5 years later, Taesung stood on a hillside overlooking a city that had been rebuilt after the attacks. Next to him stood Minho, who had also retired from military service. "They came here every year on the anniversary of New Soul's destruction. Do you think it was worth it?" Minho asked. "All the death. All the pain." Taesung thought about it for a long time before answering. "I don't know," he finally said. "Ask me in another 50 years. If the Federation holds, if species are still choosing dialogue over domination, then maybe yes, and if it doesn't hold, Then we'll have learned that some problems can't be solved with war. And maybe that's a lesson worth learning too. They stood in silence watching the sunset. In the city below, human children played with alien children, different species working together, learning from each other, building something new. It wasn't perfect. There were still tensions, still disagreements, still the occasional threat of violence, but it was better than what came before, and sometimes better was enough. Tae-sung thought about that moment in the council chamber when he had stood up and declared war. How terrified he had been, how certain they would all die, but they hadn't died. They had fought. They had won. And they had chosen mercy when revenge would have been easier. That was humanity's real gift to the galaxy. Not superior weapons or clever tactics, but the stubborn belief that things could be better. That freedom was worth any price. And that even in the darkest moments,